Good afternoon. Welcome to the December 3rd, 2024 work session of Mayor and City Council of Hagerstown. The meeting is now called to order. Okay, first up, we've got review draft of the Washington County Comprehensive Plan. Kathy?
Sorry. It's great. I thought 405 was good. All right, you had a big package for me in the packet, and I figured maybe it'd be a little easier to follow along with a PowerPoint and some photos and so forth. And so what I'm here before you is that the county has released finally the final draft of their Comprehensive Plan 2040. They've been working on it for many years in-house between the staff and the County Planning Commission, which is a huge project to do something like a comprehensive plan for a county in-house. And so it's taken them a lot of effort, and they've released it now late October, and it's in the 60-day public review period. State law requires if you have a comprehensive plan you're planning to send out to a public hearing, first you do a 60-day public review period where you send it to the state, so all the state agencies have a chance to give you more comments than you ever hope to get. And then also nearby municipalities like us, Funkstown, whomever it might be interested, they will also get copies. And then we have a chance then to provide comments back to the county during that 60 days that's ahead of their hearing. And they have already scheduled their hearing for January 13th.
That's quick. Yep.
January 13th, yes. So the goal is to present to you these comments that staff developed and then presented to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission didn't have any changes. And then see if you agree with these comments, if you have other comments, you want to change anything, and then we will send the official comments from the city back to the county on their comp plan. And so every local government that has zoning powers that can create zoning districts and hold people to what the zoning ordinance says can happen in those districts, they have to have a comprehensive plan. And it has to be at least looked at every 10 years. And so that's what's happening here with the counties. They are actually, though, they're updating their 2002 plan with this plan. The city's plan was adopted in 2018, so our next one is due is 2028. And we did it in-house last time, which is a big job. This coming plan, we really would like to go out and get some consultant help because the state has made these plans so technical, it's difficult to do some of it with just staff expertise. Plus, it's good to get outside eyes to look at things every once in a while. And state law puts the responsibility for developing the comprehensive plan in the Planning Commission's hands. And so staff or the consultant would work very closely with the Planning Commission, and then the Planning Commission then gets to a point where, okay, this is our final draft. We think that this is the vision for our community for the next 20 years, and now it's time to put it out for public input. The county actually did even more than that. Last year, they came out with an initial draft and had invited input at a variety of public meetings throughout the county, and the city sent comments last summer as a result of that initial review. And they made a number of tweaks to their plan and got it to the point that it's in right now, where they're saying this is our final official draft and we're looking for public comments. Let's see. Already touched on that. Okay, so we went over the plan. I must admit, I didn't spend a lot of time like on the mining chapter and things like that. I was looking more at parts of the plan that are of particular interest to Hagerstown, the urban center of the county. And so I read through all those, like the growth chapter, the water resources chapter, housing, community facilities, things like that, things where it has a direct impact on the city and what we offer and what's important to us. And so I divided it up into recommendations that support city goals, because there's a lot of good stuff in this plan, and then issues of concern from a city perspective. Planning Commission reviewed it on November 13th, and they didn't have anything to add, and they suggested that we bring this forward to the council. All right, so this is the section recommendations supporting city goals. First, the plan is actually proposing to reduce the Hagerstown urban growth area. The Hagerstown urban growth area is the boundary that the county uses to say this is where we're expecting growth, urban scale growth to be focused. And then they use this boundary as the intended water and wastewater service area in the county's water and sewer plan. And so while they use the Hagerstown urban growth area, The city uses something called the medium range growth area because in municipal comp plans, we are required by state law. With the cities and the counties are get different rules on this issue. For a growth boundary for municipal comp plans, we are required to do assessments of how could the vacant land develop based on how it's zoned? How much demand is that going to create on utilities? I guess I'm up.
No, sorry.
I gotta take my stuff and go.
That wasn't me.
All right.
That
I'm gonna
wasn't
turn
me.
my ding down.
And so, what can the land generate based on how it's zoned? How many houses? How much kind of commercial development? And then what do you have left in your plants that could serve new development? And then the state says to municipalities, you have to set a boundary. That's as far as you plan to grow because that's all you can handle to serve. For counties, that same requirement is not in place. They were more concerned about what I guess the municipalities were doing in terms of growth. So they didn't say to the counties, they want you to have a growth area, but they didn't say you have to do that same type of analysis. So our growth area is smaller because we have found we don't have enough water and wastewater capacity in our community to serve the larger urban growth area, which is the existing is the red on the bottom square, the proposed is the black on the upper square. And ours is, it's hard to see, but ours is the blue line on the lower square, which is a bit smaller because we're saying this is the amount of land we think we can serve for the life of our plan, 20 years. What the kind of growth you would expect to see in 20 years' time. We're saying, though, we don't have enough capacity to fully serve it. Like if it completely built out, we don't have enough capacity. But this is the size, medium range growth area is the size of what you might be able to, we think we can serve for the next 20 years. We know we can't serve the red area. We're saying the blue area. And so the county is proposing to shrink that red area to what the blue boundaries are, which is great. We really appreciate that they're taking into consideration that there are constraints with utilities. But, so that's wonderful. The caveat is, while the reduced area is still larger than the MRGA, their plan is still anticipating that the city will provide water to this area, that's how this area will grow. And we're already saying in a variety of documents, no, the medium range growth area is what we say we can serve. And so that's, even though it's shrinking, it hasn't shrunk all the way down, and they're still expecting that the city will serve it. So that's the only caveat there. It's great, it's coming down. Water and wastewater assessment study with the city. This is a recommendation. And it's, I think it's great that they want to do it with us. And it would be good to have it with us because we can then present the data so everybody in the community who thinks they knows what's going on with the city's water system would actually have the facts. And we could have a real conversation about where are we, what would it take to get a little bit bigger with our plant? And even if we got a little bit bigger with our plant, how much could we actually serve? So that would be a really good conversation to have. And then explore sending more county wastewater customers to the county wastewater plant. Many people may not realize this, but the city wastewater plant treats all the development north of the city and east of the city, as well as everything that's in the city. The county's plant, which is to the west, can't reach the east side and it can't reach the north side. And so we are sending a lot of county customers to the city plant, which takes up capacity and makes it so that we have limited capacity to serve the rest of the city, as well as other development that's planning to be served on the north and east side of town. So if they think it would be good to take more of those county customers over to their plant, that would be great because it frees up capacity at our plant. And right now the county is exploring in the, I think it's the blue area, right? Yeah, the blue area, the county's exploring with a new line going up to that area, the Morgan's Superstation, to take that area and bring it over to the county plant. That would be great. We're saying, if you want to take some of the gold, that'd be good too, because we have a lot of, it's called inflow and infiltration that goes into those county pipes and comes to the city plant. And the most where that happens in our system is up here north of town. So if they'd like to take some of that, not only does that take customers over to the county plant and free up capacity, it also will take some of that I&I over to the county side and free up even more capacity at our plant. So we think that would be a great idea. We'd love to have a conversation about that. Again, continue to eliminate I&I to free up capacity at the wastewater plant. Again, as I said, that would be wonderful because a lot of our I&I come into our plant, which means it's free customers. It's stormwater, groundwater, things that are getting into the pipes that are not people flushing toilets. It's just stuff's getting into the pipes. Because that's why we spend a lot of effort relining pipes so that we can keep that out. And the goal is just to treat the paying customers. and not use up capacity on free stuff that nobody wants it anyway, and they're not paying. And so that's why we've spent a lot of effort lining plants to keep out that inflow and infiltration. So we think that'd be great for them to focus on that as well. And then it says coordinate with the municipalities on land use planning for annexations. Again, that would be great. It makes it a lot easier coordinating the zoning, because per state annexation law, when the city annexes, if we're proposing to annex with zoning that is substantially different or not substantially similar, it's weird kind of weaselly language, to what's currently zoned in the county, then the county commissioners have to grant what's called express approval. They have to say, okay, yeah, we're okay with that change to the zoning that it would have in the city that's not completely similar to what's out here in the county. So if there was more coordination between what's being recommended around outside our borders with what's inside our borders, that would make that whole process a lot simpler. Recommendations, again, more supporting city goals. Changes proposed for the highway interchange zoning. Highway interchange zoning is an unusual animal. It's basically allows most any commercial industrial stuff that you can think of is allowed in the HI zone. And on the upper map, the yellow and maroon areas are the industrial, the brown are the highway interchange. As you might imagine, people who own raw land that they hope to develop someday in a non-residential manner, they would love HI because it's completely flexible. It makes the complete flexibility of it, though, it makes it very difficult to plan for utilities because, you know, it could be a hotel, it could be a huge factory, who knows? And then also, it's hard to match up city zoning for annexations with HI because our zoning is more specific. We want commercial in this area. We want industrial in this area. We don't have any zones that say we want commercial and industrial all together in one area. And so assigning the zoning we annex, if it's HI out in the county, is a little tricky. So they're proposing to not only have less HI zoning, which will be interesting with the public hearings, they are also proposing to take the industrial out of the HI, even the HI that they will keep, have that be more of a commercial, since it is highway interchange intending to be a commercial. And so then that will make it a lot easier in terms of the annexation zonings as well as capacity planning, because we know, okay, over here where they've colored it in for industrial, that's going to be warehouses or, you know, industrial users. Where they've colored it in for commercial, that's more likely going to be, you know, retail services, things like that. So that would be wonderful. Providing more clarity on residential density on future land use map. The existing comp plan for the county shows low density and high density. There's a lot of room in between low density and high density. The current plan, they're showing medium density as well, which gives you more of a sense of what they hope to see happen in those areas. On the map, the darker blue is where they are proposing is medium density. And for the most part, it's already developed areas. So it does reflect what's out there. And again, having that there is more helpful in terms of your utility capacity planning as well as assigning zoning for when you annex. And then they're also proposing more flexible residential zoning, creating higher densities so that their lowest density zone currently doesn't allows less density than what the state says should be the minimum density that you have in an urban growth area, but in their priority funding area zoning. And so they're proposing to increase that density to bring it up so it's at least matches that state standard, and then create mixed use zones, promote more flexibility. I think the goal is to allow townhouses in some zones. Right now, you can only do townhouses out in the county with an overlay zone, which is a whole big, you know, you have to go through public hearings with the planning commission, public hearings with the county commissioners, and then you get zoning approved to do townhouses. Whereas in the city, we have certain zones where we expect to see these types of housing, and it could include in townhouses. So I think there is a plan afoot, if it survives, to allow townhouses by right in some places. And there's a lot of demand for townhouses, as you might imagine. A caveat is, while they're recommending a lot of intensification of density, you need to be aware of utility capacity constraints when you're proposing to do a lot more density in terms of housing. Do we have what we need to serve it? And so on this little map, there's just a snapshot of the UGA. The darker blue is the medium density. And then where they're showing cross-hatching is they're proposing a mixed use corridors, a variety of them around the UGA, where it would be an overlay zone. And from the text, it sounds like rather than it being put on the map, individual property owners in those areas would come forward saying, I would like to have a mixed-use corridor overlay on my property to do mixed use or things like, or more density on my property. It does not sound like it would be a by right thing. You'd have to come through a process with hearings. But it's more density and mixing of uses than they typically allow. Encourage creation of sidewalks in the UGA. Sidewalks are a huge goal for the Planning Commission, and it's a huge goal in the city's comprehensive plan because we have a lot of folks that walk. And if there aren't sidewalks, you'll see beaten down trails, or they'll be out in the street walking, pushing strollers, which is not good. You see that on the dual highway, and it's terrifying, particularly on that bridge by Eastern and dual highway where they've got this much room and they're pushing a stroller. So it recommends working with the municipalities on priorities for infill sidewalks on county roads. That's great. Recommends requiring sidewalks as a part of the new development and redevelopment in the UGA. That's also great. And why it's important, as I said, it's a high priority for us. And what we're experiencing is when we have development that's occurring adjoining a county road and we're telling developers, we want you to put a sidewalk out there, it's not a priority because sidewalks and the county's stormwater system don't always work well together. The city tends to have a curb, a little grass strip, and a sidewalk, and it's all flat. And then the stormwater is going into a pipe and then taken away. The county system is more of the more natural stormwater in that they will have the street, a ditch, and then it's the private property. The ditch makes it hard to do sidewalks. And so oftentimes we are told, no, we do not want a sidewalk there in the county right of way. And so we have approved some developments like the warehouses over there at Edgewood and Howell. There's no sidewalk on Howell because the county did not want a sidewalk on Howell. And so hopefully this would be a new day in terms of sidewalks for the county. That'd be great. Because I'm sure there are gonna be people walking over there. But they'll be either in the street or beating the path in the grass. Transit recommendations to serve all major subdivisions and employment centers in the UGA and enhance on-time performance and incorporate the Hopewell Express into the county transit system. These are all really great goals. Low-income residents need good transit to get to living wage employment areas. On-time service is critical if you hope to use transit to get to a job and classes at HCC. If it's not on time and you keep going to work late, I don't know how long you're going to keep that job. So it's really critical that they have on-time performance. And then right now, there are no county buses that go out to the Hopewell Valley employment area, which is just to the west of the city. It's all handled by CIC's Hopewell Express, which is funded through a federal grant. Well, if that grant were to go away, that service goes away. So it's great that they're recommending incorporating that into the county transit. Forest conservation. Forest conservation is a state law that was passed down to local government that when you do development review, you either have to preserve a certain amount of whatever trees are already on the ground or replant based on a very complicated formula that's in the code that we had to put into our code. Or developers can pay a fund to the city and the city will take their responsibility and plant trees elsewhere, whether street trees, in the parks, in priority areas, whatever. This plan for the county is recommending a big priority would be, and it is a priority for anybody if you've got it, is the riparian forest, which trees along the creeks, because that helps cool the streams, which is good. And then large contiguous forested areas, all really where you want to see forest preserved. City's running out of those kind of places. And so, and we recognize that it is a high priority to be able to preserve trees in those areas. Is there a way to possibly look at, if the state law would allow it, if the mayor and council would be interested, is working with the county, so the money we collect from developers, have the county or soil conservation district, whoever's doing it for the county, take that money and preserve trees in the high priority areas out in the county that we basically don't have anymore inside the city. Downtown revitalization assistance, we really appreciate the plan. Is recommended to continue partnering with municipalities in support of downtown and Main Street revitalization efforts. For school planning, it says to coordinate with the county public school system to identify and locate future school facilities to meet expanding school enrollment, and that would be great because in the urban growth area, many of the schools are already over capacity. And with the growth planning focusing even more development into the urban growth area, it's just going to get worse. So it's really important to be looking at new school sites because not every school can take an addition. Sometimes you're going to need a new school. And another comment that we would throw out there is it's also important to plan for the funding of these schools, to have money put into the CIP as a companion to having an ordinance, which is the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance, which is a tool to control how much development can occur if the schools are crowded. State law says if you have one of those, you also have to be putting money in your CIP to deal with that problem. So it's really important, not just to talk about preserving school sites, but to be planning for those seats that you are telling developers need to be there in order for their projects to get approved. All right, issues of concern from a city perspective. In this plan, the county did some analysis of what kind of development has been occurring around the urban growth area and what the raw land can generate. Unfortunately, it excludes Hagerstown. So all of the analysis, even though it's talking about the county, it does not include data from Hagerstown. It doesn't include how much development has been occurring in the last 10, 20 years inside the city, or what's in our pipeline right now, which is a lot, or what could be generated. And so perhaps if all of our growth were included in there, that maybe the UGA wouldn't need to be quite so large. It also doesn't give a full picture of the demand on utilities if everything that happens inside the urban center of the urban growth area is not part of the analysis. And then I touched on this earlier, having the urban growth area designated as the city water service area, even reduced, the UGA is larger than our MRGA, and the plan still considers the UGA as the city water service area. City plans use a smaller area, as I mentioned, because of our land capacity and utility capacity analysis says we showed we do not have enough to serve the UGA. That's why we created the MRGA. It would be more realistic for their plan to either explore alternative water sources, as they mentioned by the county, or to shrink the UGA to the MRGA if they're still relying on city water service for growth in that area. Out-of-date data on municipal utility plants. This table shows, and I just showed you part of it to focus on Hagerstown. It went all the way out to include other plants. But it says in here in fine print that the data from the municipal plans comes from their most recently adopted comprehensive plan. Well, our plan is 2018. The data in our plan came from 2010 to 2014, which is kind of old given how much has been happening. And so it might be more helpful to get some more up-to-date data. I know that's more difficult to do because you got to go around all the town and say, what can you tell me about your plans? But it would be helpful to have an explanation of the projected demand numbers that are in this chart in terms of what they think is going to be coming by 2040. There's no explanation about where those numbers come from, and that would be helpful. Cost sharing with the city for transit operational funding. This will be a big problem for the city because city taxpayers are already contributing to this source. This would be asking city taxpayers to pay twice. If additional resources are needed, a meeting with all levels of government, federal, state, local, might be a good idea. But to think that it should be falling on the back of city taxpayers twice does not seem fair. Contribution of Hagerstown Fire Department to the fire rescue EMS service in Hagerstown. We have this chart that's on this slide. There is no acknowledgement in the plan of the amount of service provided by Hagerstown Fire Department inside the UGA. This would make you believe we never leave our boundaries. We're just, running around inside the city. But in fact, we are a big part of how the system works for the UGA. We have automatic aid agreements with the volunteer companies. We provide assistance to the county special operations team. And we operate a fire training center that's open to all the volunteer companies and has been for decades. So we think it really, in this area, this is not enough information to acknowledge the amount of service provided by our service to the UGA. And those were all of the comments that staff and the Planning Commission had. And so if you have additional comments or you disagree with anything in here, just let us know either now or at a subsequent meeting. But the end of December is when they're looking to get the comments back.
Just a quick question
Mm-hmm.
regarding the concerns of not including data or having outdated data. Do you think it's because they used the old template to make this? I mean, not having the fire department is huge.
Last year we sent the same request to have it acknowledged in the plan. It did not get picked up for whatever reason. In terms of the data for their analysis, they are using their permitting software for data, and so we're not in that software. So that's The challenge though is at times they use the census data to show what the population projections should be. But then they only use what's in their permitting software to show what's been happening and so there's, I think, a bit of a disconnect there.
Thank you.
It would be a matter of asking all the municipalities, what have you been doing if the county's not involved with their permitting process? As soon as I read it, I sent our information. This is what's happened the last 20 years. This is what's in the pipeline, so that they would have that.
How long is that funding for the transit that goes to Hopewell? Is that,
You know, when I used to talk to the former executive director, it always seemed like it might be a year-by-year thing, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But it was great when it started because there wasn't anything to allow our folks to get out to Hopewell
Right.
where all those jobs are. A lot of you see the buses that run around town, they often say they're going to some shopping center. It'd be nice if the priority was some employment center where there's higher paying jobs.
I mean, sometimes I think of the bus that runs out to the outlets. Like, is it really beneficial to the city right now? Like, how many people are really, I mean, do they ever do like a poll that lets you know how many people are going out there as far as jobs?
I'm sure they have data over there at County Transit.
Anybody else got any questions or comments for Kathy?
I mean, I think the biggest disconnect in the county's draft plan, and it's kind of interesting because, you read our comments, you look at the county's comments, and not really the states, but like Greater Hagerstown, they provided comments and everybody's sort of commenting from the perspective of what fits the billing of what our priorities are. And it goes back to a little bit to, the days before we had like the lobbying coalition where we all sat down and said, here's what we'd like to get from the state as a group. If folks remember back in the day, what we did is everybody went down to the state delegation and the city said, here's what we need. And the county said, here's what we need. And EDC said, here's what we need. And Greater Hagerstown would say, here's what we need. And everybody sort of lobbied for their, specific priority. And it almost reads a little bit like these comments sort of do the same thing, regardless of what entity they come from. And you clearly point out that the biggest issue, at least for me, the biggest disconnect, and I think I've said this to Scott, is, we talk about the tax implication of growth and development, but really it's the utility implication. And for the plan to leave out the data associated with municipal development, not just in the city, but municipal development in general in that application, but then want to include the water resource element or utility resource element of, what those utility estimations are, as long as the state directive continues to be for these comprehensive plans that the counties exercise authority over water and sewer classification systems, but they're controlling that classification system, even though they don't control the utilities or own and operate and maintain the utilities. There's always going to be this disconnect. And at some point, we've got to get into the state's perspective that the city can't write a fully accurate, projection within its comp plan as it applies to utility growth any more than the county can, because utilities, not governmental bodies, utilities, whomever owns the utility should be the entity that is the determining entity over the water and sewer classification of the system that they own. And when you read these comments, you read like Greater Hagerstown says, we've got to, work on the coordination efforts of water and sewer utility systems in the county's plan. We got to work on, and it's like, you were saying this, but you have a governing body that doesn't own something that the state says you get to decide the classification system of how that utility you don't own is going to grow. I just can't imagine the state coming in saying, you know what, county, you have natural gas, utilities within your county, you have electric grid systems within your county, you're gonna be the classification entity over how those electric utility grid systems expand. You're gonna be the entity that decides the classification system over how those natural gas, utilities like Columbia and others are going to expand. It seems odd to me that the state is sort of stuck in this process. It feels as archaic as franchise agreements, frankly, and so I feel like that's the big item in there. And to continue to not do that and also not recognize municipal growth, I use this comparison. I mean, it wasn't 6 years ago where, just about every one of these warehouse sites were residential and commercial, slated for development. They weren't going to be these huge warehouses with this very limited amount of utility usage. They were going to be hundreds of houses, right? And large shopping centers, all big users of utilities. So to use data that's, 10 years out of date, it might as well be decades out of date compared to the growth that we've seen in these large swaths of land, and not just in the swaths of land themselves, because we had the expectation that these big swaths of open land, and I'll take the one off Howe Road, was gonna be, 250 houses. It's not, it's 3 big warehouses. And that change alone, it's not just the land itself, but where. And when you get into this dialogue of, maybe the county should take more sewer utility customer usage, off the city's hands and put it onto the county. What should really be said there is the owners and operators of those respective utilities should develop a plan based on what is the most cost-efficient way of sewer delivery service to those 2 locations, so that one entity isn't building 30 pump stations to pump it around another entity simply because of geographic location, right? That doesn't make any sense. You would say, here's how sewer flows in this area of the county, and here's how sewer flows in this area of the county. And whichever way we can get it to whichever place the most cost effective should be how the plan develops as it applies to that utility.
Except the city's wastewater plant is significantly constrained because the state will not let us use it to its full capacity.
It is. And that's a conversation for the state, and a conversation associated with, what we can get it down to. But the answer can't be that, and I respect that of the business community that has said this over time. The answer can't be that it's going to be 0, or that it's going to be, nothing, or that it's never going to change. I mean, that can't be the answer for it. I just don't want to see, this donut wraparound with 16 pump stations because of that technological, immediate limitation.
They can't treat the chemicals to the level they want them treated.
Right.
So are there any changes that you would like made?
I mean, I don't know who we asked that question to. I get
Because
on
some of
that.
what you're saying, the county has no control over either.
I just get on that soapbox. I don't understand, the dinosaurs of the 201 facilities plans and water and sewer classification systems still being applicable today, because utilities don't work that way today. It's no different than these franchise agreements we get in these conversations with, where people want franchise agreements sitting like, yeah, but telecommunications doesn't work that way anymore. Cable delivery doesn't work that way anymore. It's like, well, we know it doesn't, but we're still going to use this old methodology to apply to the way things don't work anymore. That's the only thing that I would take back is the city should have, an adoptable water and sewer subsidiary, water and sewer classification plan. It just should. If we're going to identify our MGRA, and it's going to be different than the county's ultimate UGA, we're basing it on a utility, but utility decisions classification-wise, are based on an entity that doesn't own and operate the utilities. And if you're never going to fix that disconnect unless you fix the methodology in which it's applied.
Recently, we had trouble where MDE and the health department were trying to put even more control over into the county's hands by saying if we had properties classified in the county water and sewer plant as not already W1, S1, which means already served, then the plan had to be amended
That's right,
before they would approve our developments.
which doesn't make any sense at all. It just doesn't. I can't imagine that being the way that the state would apply the same metrics to the extension and delivery of electric utility systems. Because it's just not. So, that's my 2 cents.
How long till the end of the month?
Mm-hmm.
For anything else?
Yeah. Yeah, that's when the 60 days would be up. Or we just send comments to the public hearing, but this is, the 60-day period is still open until late December.
And I don't look for that to get resolved. I look for us to have passage of these plans, as they've been developed, and have that consternation exist for another 6 years. That's what I look to happen.
When the state first came out with the requirement for these water resource elements and the municipal plans and the county plans, which is basically, you're telling the municipalities, you have to develop a water plan.
Right.
And we're like, okay, what about that county plan that MDE requires to be
Right.
created that includes us, whether we like it or not?
Right.
And I would go to meetings at the state and I'd bring this up with the MDE, to the point they were running away from me because, they didn't want to deal with it.
Right. I'd
Because I
rather
said,
just go-
these two things are going like this.
Yeah, and I feel like the water resource element plan was a compromise to municipalities and counties of respective utility systems ownership to not want to absolutely comply with the capacity management plan, which seemed a bit more overbearing. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, if you're not going to do this, you at least got to put it in your plan somewhere. You're at least, monitoring how much water and sewer you have left and where you're gonna.
And that's where the technical requirements that have gotten out of hand are in these local plans. There's no way a Funkstown or a Keedysville, any town that doesn't really have a full-scale staff could ever hope to do that without hiring the consultants. So I don't know what shape all of these,
Yeah.
because most of the municipalities in Maryland are tiny and have skeleton crews. So I don't know how they're complying with this requirement. Okay.
Anybody else? Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right, just so everybody knows, we skipped over the first one. Just waiting on Chris to come up the stairs. So we're going to go back to our first agenda item, which is and maybe we should have told Kathy before we surprised her, but the area-wide optimization program award from Maryland Department of the Environment. We got Nancy Hausrath, Director of Utilities, and Tyler Puffenberger, Deputy Director of Water Wastewater, and Chris Mosier, Maryland Department of Environment.
How you doing?
Hey, good
So I
afternoon.
brought along with me
And I'm listening to you.
Matthew Carr, Superintendent, and then David Hopkins on the end, as Assistant Superintendent,
And
and
hey.
Marcy Wilson. And Chris
I'm
Mosher.
Chris Mosier. I'm with MDE. I'm in our water supply program. Even more specifically, I'm in the Engineering and Technical Assistance Division. So my role is typically like doing sanitary surveys, going out to water systems and seeing if they're meeting regulations and anything I can do to like give them recommendations to improve and stuff like that. But the reason why I'm here today is kind of a bit more upbeat. I am here because recently this year, we kind of soft launched an awards program. As you mentioned, the area-wide optimization program. That was a program started by the EPA, but Maryland has adopted it for a while now, but we just haven't done any recognition really since this year. And that is basically for any surface water systems throughout the state. EPA has set like goals of like beyond compliance of like what the places they can reach to improve their water quality, to make their water customers have cleaner, safer water. And so we started this awards program to kind of recognize utilities that really went above and beyond, beyond the just regulation requirements of improving their water. And so what I have here today is kind of just a simple little cardstock award here, but it really recognizes the work that Hagerstown has done at their water treatment plant to improve their water quality. We have how we set it up this time and probably going forward. We have a bronze, a silver, and a gold award. That basically recognizes 3 stages throughout the water treatment of where we would collect data and see, how well they achieve their regulations, and then for this particular program, how far above and beyond they went. And so Hagerstown actually achieved the goals, above the goals for all 3 of those data points we were looking at. And so we have an AWOP Gold Award here that presented to these lovely folks here to kind of recognize the work that they've been doing, the time, the effort, the money, all that is going into the water treatment plant. And that's really what I'm here for. So a little set aside for that. And I appreciate you guys taking the time for me to come out and speak a little bit on this. This is actually my first ever council meeting, so thank you for hosting me. Yeah, so I have the award here. I hand it over to you guys.
Thank you.
And
Well, I'm clapping.
Yeah.
Great job to Nancy and team. We're not surprised, but I'm glad that the public hear how great of a job you guys do.
yeah.
Thank you. You're a great job.
Good picture?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And did you hear all that discussion we just had before, Chris? about-
sure
I know.
You want to take that back with you?
Yeah, I'm usually not at that kind of level of discussion, but I'll put in a word for you guys. You guys are doing great work, and there's so many pieces involved with running a city, and, obviously we have, we're butting heads every once in a while, but obviously we want you guys to have as much as you can have, so. I'll do what I can, but I'm not quite at that.
All right.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'd like to add one thing, is a huge thank you to our operators who are not here tonight. It's a 24 hours, 7-day, 365-day year operation. And of course, we have just 2 supervisors. There's 11 operators and two supervisors. So there's 13 people working around the clock, 365 days a year to produce this drinking water for all of our customers. So a huge thank you to all of our employees, and I just didn't want to not recognize them.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Okay, next up, award of the contract for preparation of Community Development Block Grant, better known as CDBG, 5-year action plan and analysis of impediments to fair housing. Jill Thompson, Director of Community and Economic Development, Margie Joe, Community Development Manager, and Rachel Paul, Planning and Outreach Coordinator.
Hello. Well, thanks for giving us the opportunity to present today. This normally would be a consent item, but we're sort of looking to give our consultant a chance to get into work before the holidays hit, because I think we all know nothing's really going to happen this last couple of weeks of the month. But thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Just a quick background, the City of Hagerstown is an entitlement recipient of the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, from HUD. Each year, we submit to HUD an annual action plan that outlines the activities and programs that will administer to meet the goals and objectives of the CDBG program. Every 5 years, HUD requires the submission of a comprehensive 5-year consolidated plan and an analysis of impediments to fair housing. This plan is pulled together using extensive data collection and community outreach and provides a blueprint for the annual action plans that are created during that period. This endeavor is estimated to take about 6 to 7 months with submission of the plan to HUD in June of 2025.
So, an RFP was issued for CDBG Planning Consultant Services, and one bid was received from Urban Design Ventures, UDV, headquartered in Homestead, PA, with a proposed project cost of $54,500. And this expense is fully funded by CDBG grant funding that is already in place. UDV's proposal met all criteria for the project, and they are familiar with Hagerstown CDBG planning, as they were also the consultant for the city's previous 5-year common plan in 2020. So staff recommends award of the contract to UDV with a 10% contingency built in, and vote on this contract will take place at the special session next Tuesday, the 10th. And happy to entertain any questions.
All good? Anyone?
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Next up, we have restoration of funding for Hagerstown police officer positions. Chief Joey Kifer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'll be the first to come ask for something. of the group. I'm proud to say that I'm asking for something that's been long overdue, and we're finally at a position to come back and ask to have positions reassigned back to my department. So as you know, over the last 6 years, we've repurposed some of those vacant positions into funding for the officers that were still here during a time when law enforcement was really struggling and we were losing people to other agencies. So the previous council awarded that opportunity for me to repurpose my budget for that, with the understanding that if I got back to a position to increase those numbers back up to close to where we were, they would honor that. So I know you're not bound by that, but that's what the previous council had talked about. So I'm here today to let you know that as of today, we had 2 candidates pass their polygraph today and 1 passed psychological. With that, they still have a couple of minor processes to go, but that's usually a good indicator they're going to make it through the process. We will be at 89 on the payroll. My current authorized strength is 91. I just signed 3 conditional offers today for 3 additional candidates, and we have 15 additional in the background for entry level, and I have 4 in the background for lateral or comparative compliance. So the reality of it is I could easily have 20 people in this next academy in February. With the numbers that we're looking at and the people that are currently in background that we have, we feel good about, asking for 9 additional staff members right now, I think I can fill by February 1st. There's a very good likelihood I may have to come back and ask for a couple additional positions in January if some of these other candidates actually play out the way we hope they would. That would put me at probably 102 or 104 people on the payroll. But I want to take it one step at a time, and staff and I have discussed it, and we believe that we easily can meet that 100-man police department staffing model come February 1st, or by February 1st, by the start of the next academy. And so I'm here to ask for 9 of the positions that I had in the past repurposed the funding for into salaries. So at this time, the remainder of this fiscal year, our budget can absorb that cost. And we've talked to the finance director, and we understand that that need would have to be met in the next budget cycle, and we feel confident we can do that.
Chief, would you explain, when you talk about repurposing the funding, because all we've heard is the police department was defunded, would you explain what that process amounted to?
Sure. So like I said, there's a few years when we had a mass exodus of officers leaving the department through retirements and just leaving law enforcement or leaving to other agencies. We had unfilled positions a lot of unfilled positions. And in order to try to stave off that exodus of additional officers leaving, I came to the council and asked if I could take some of those positions, the money from those positions, and repurpose it back into the salaries to increase the salaries of those that were here working, to encourage and entertain them to the point where they didn't want to leave our agency for other ventures. Had to do something to try to stop the bleed, so to speak. And in doing that, we just took current budget money of positions that I couldn't fill anyway, because there was nobody coming in the door to take those positions back. And I felt it more important to put the money into the pockets of the men and women that were here doing double and triple the work because of those vacancies, to honor them and reward them for that, and get them to a position that allowed them to decide this was the place they wanted to stay, that they didn't want to go across the mountain, that they didn't want to get out of law enforcement altogether, because that devastation would have been something not anyone would imagine at the time. So it was really just repurposing that money, kept it within my budget. It went right back to the same men and women that were staying here and working here. But they were positions I couldn't fill anyway. I mean, we're talking 5 years later, I'm finally at a point where the market for the jobs for law enforcement seems to be turning back around again. We're getting a lot of really, really strong candidates coming through the door in big batches, where before, dribs and drabs, you get 1 or 2, and we had 12, 14, 15 vacancies. I lost 25% of my department in a year and a half. 25%. You cannot replace 25% of your manpower very quick. This is not the kind of job that can do that. It takes a minimum of 10 months to replace a position that leaves today. And that's if it happens and I can hire someone to start the academy the day that person left. The reality is it takes about 500 days to replace somebody that leaves the department through background, hiring, waiting for an academy to start, 6 months of an academy, 4 months of field training. You're 500 days on average. It's just not something that I could have, that our department would not have survived if we didn't try to do something back then with that money. And it was just money that was going to come back into the general fund and go right into that surplus at the end of the year, because it wasn't going to get spent. So spending it in a way that I did, I felt was the best course of action. And the guys deserved it. They deserved every penny of it. They deserved way more than I could have given back then, but it was what I thought we needed to do. And quite frankly, it did slow that down enough that we could muddle our way through. As an agency, we could muddle our way through without overly impacting what the community felt. And for the large part, I don't think the community realized how short-staffed we were. I had to suspend specialized units and move those units back into the basic patrol function just to meet the needs of the responding calls. So we've been short-staffed in a lot of ways, but short-staffed in areas that would have been proactive for us to go out and do. We just didn't have staff. And there's a basic need that you have to do. You have to respond to calls and you have to investigate crimes. Those are the two things you have to do. And that is patrol and your investigative unit. Everything else is icing on the cake if you can do it. And trust me, I've been working with staff, I've been working on this model myself, and an agency or a city our size, we are woefully understaffed in terms of what agencies look like around the country. Frederick City has 160 police officers. They are nowhere near as busy as we are. I'm not saying we should have 160 police officers. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. But I'm saying our department, in order to really run the most efficient way you could, is to single purpose your task. And that's what Frederick is doing down there. They have single purpose task. You come in and your job is to do A, you do A. You don't do B, C, or D, or E. Agency like ours, and a lot of agencies like ours, you're doing A, B, C, and F, because you got to fill voids where you can. So everyone's multitasking. There's a sweet spot, I think, for our agency, if we could ever get there. And I know there's a lot of other things that will go into play there. The economy part of that is really the hard part to figure out, which is where you guys would have to make some choices and figure out some things, and the city as a whole would have to find a way to generate that money. But, that sweet spot's probably between 115 and 120 man police department for an agency of the work that we do, and for the city that has the things going on that's going on. Again, not asking for that. We're nowhere near getting to there anyway, but the reality is I say it here tonight because I think you as a council need to hear that and know that if that creeps forward within your time at this table for the next 4 years and that creeps up, you at least understand why that's creeping up. What a 100-man police department will do for me when all those officers are working. They will beef up my patrol division to the point where I'm not having to pay overtime to fill shifts, which is what I've been doing for the last several years to meet those minimum standards. It will beef it up, those minimum standards go away for the most part. It will allow me to create specialized units like a community resource officer program that I just banned it years ago that worked very well. It was one of the programs that actually had huge impact in our community. Worked not only on prevention, but worked on the ability for the community to give information that we weren't getting before on big crimes because they trusted the officers in those communities. It would allow me to start a street crime unit again. That street crime unit has been repurposed out of the task force doing dual duties right now. They're doing narcotic stuff and street crime work. It will allow me to do that as well. It will allow me to add detectives. I'm down to 5 detectives. When I was in the detective bureau, we had 10. Before I worked up the ranks, we used to have 10. So we have 2 vacant SRO positions that we've had vacant for a while that I could fill at least one of those. There's just a lot that we can do with a 100-man police department that we can't do right now. With all that said, the next academy starts in February. To see the fruits of the labor of me asking for these 9 positions wouldn't be felt until October of next year because they have to go through the academy, go through field training, and then make it out onto solo patrol. That wouldn't be till at least October of next year before we would feel the impact of this decision. But I wanted to at least bring this to your attention, basically the future casting, and we could talk about that down the road some more, so you have a better understanding what that might look like. But for tonight's purpose, I'm asking for 9 positions back. That would get me to a 100-man police department sworn, and with the understanding I might be coming back in January to ask for a few extra positions if these candidates all pan out, and I hope that they do. It'd be great if they do. We've got 3 very strong lateral candidates right now, so if we pick them up, they could be on the street within weeks at the earliest.
I mean,
But,
this is a great problem to have to come back to request more positions. And kudos to you and HPD for recognizing that retention and recruitment efforts are important to even get to this place by increasing salaries, increasing the bonuses, because you just mentioned lateral, which you just approved for more bonus for lateral positions. So this is a good problem. This is great. So of course, I'm on board with this.
Yeah, and I'm big on public safety, so I
Great.
think even more than 100 would be better for our city, so.
like I said,
was gonna ask you, what would be the ideal academy for you going into February when that would be like the brand new start? What would be the ideal number? Like if you had an ideal of this is what would set me apart, like what would be that ideal number?
well, as of today, if the 3 people that went through their process parts today make it through the next couple steps, which I'm confident they will, we will already have hired 10. And like I said, I have 15 additional in the background right now. Honestly, we get above, for entry level, if we get above 20, it's gonna be a struggle to do the back end work of this, the field training part of it. There's only so many staff that can field train and do that, and then that just, it's another problem I'd love to have, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining if we have it. It'll be a challenge, at least during those months that we've got to do that. It's also what the academy can handle in terms of staff, the amount of people in the academy as well. So there'll come a limit at that point where, from an entry level, I'll have to probably stall. And the reality is that in any academy, somebody doesn't make it. So all the people we could be hiring now, we could lose, one, two, or half a dozen. It's not unheard of. The academy, not this current academy, but one before that, we started off with, going into the academy with 10. We had 2 quit before they even started the academy. We had 2 quit in the academy. We had 1 that didn't make it, and we had 1 quit when he got out of the academy. So we ended up with a handful, and we started off with double digits. So that's the reality. I'm hoping that this new group coming in, the ones we've already hired and the ones that are potentials that we could hire, that we don't have that same thing happen. That's not the norm, so to speak, but generally not everyone makes it through an academy. That goes through an academy. We're hoping that all of ours do. But the reality is that we could lose 1 or 2 for whatever reason. But we could easily have 20 going in this academy with what we're looking at from those in the process. That would be great and a challenge at the same time. But I'm looking forward to that challenge. And to speak to what you mentioned, Councilmember Burnett, you can give me the thanks all you want. The men and women that are out recruiting, the staff that come up with ideas on how to better keep people in the process. Started a mentoring program. That wasn't my idea. That was staff idea that said, why can't we, that we could, but it's staff, but it was HPD staff's idea. They came to the table with, and we had volunteers step up to do that. So when someone gets in that process, they're assigned a mentor, and that mentor basically makes those phone calls and, hey, you coming for the test on Friday, or you can, make sure your background investigator, make sure you get your stuff back to your background investigator, or if they have questions, they could call and talk to that officer. That's not part of their background process. It's less intimidating. They don't have to worry about talking to the background investigator about a question that they may feel embarrassed about. So we believe there's been a big difference in that. That's keeping people in the process. We're not losing people along the way. We think the bonuses and the increase we just did with the salaries for this entry level, we're thinking that's having some impact. And I think just society as a whole, I think people are ready to get back to work. And I think the fear of getting into law enforcement's subsided quite a bit. For the last couple of years, I know we've had candidates come through that said their parents just didn't want them to do it. Didn't want them to be in law enforcement. And they started the process, and then they said they were just going to back out because they just didn't feel like they had that support at home for fear. There was just a tough time we all went through at that point. But a lot of different variations. We try to track that. We ask questions. Our staff, Jack Moulton and Mark Cheney, do the administrative component of all this, and they try to track all this data, and we try to do the research on it to see how we're working out. We got billboards out everywhere. We're promoting everywhere we can. Lieutenant Fetchy's been repurposed to be refocused solely on recruiting right now. So she's been tasked with covering all the men and women that are in those other processes, the background investigators to the mentors to the testing side. So we've really tried to change how we've been doing things over the last couple of years. And we're just sitting in a good spot, and got a lot of really, really solid, good candidates in the process right now. The 3 that I signed off today, I talked to the background investigator, and he said they are just solid. He's very, very confident they're going to make it through the process, the rest of it. So we're just hoping that's what happens.
For me, when you mention reinstating the community resource officers, I think it's huge because one, we heard from the state's attorney's office a couple months ago now about how it's difficult to get descriptions or what happened from the community members in order to solve cases. So with community resource officers in the communities that can build relationships once again with those community members would help that situation. And also, again, with building relationships, knowing some of the kids or adults that are experiencing some issues and having a person in uniform that they can go to, that we would then reach out to Ashley's, role. So it's like a full circle moment to get resources back in the community. So this is a huge win,
Yeah, and it worked in the past. It was a grant that I wrote several years ago when I was a captain, and we implemented it. And the 3 CROs that we had in 3 different neighborhoods made major impacts in those neighborhoods. We saw the calls for service and just the issues in those neighborhoods dramatically drop off in the years that they were in those areas. And unfortunately, we come up on the staffing issue and had to disband that and pull them back into regular patrol duties. And that broke my heart because that was a program that actually proved that it worked. And so I'd love to get back to that, have that unit back in place. I just think there's a lot we can do if we can get the staff level back up to where we were. And we were at 112 at one point. We were authorized at 112. We were never at 112. But we had authorization to be at 112. And I think the highest we got very briefly was 109. And again, through retirements and things that happen. And, you know, even in good times, people will leave law enforcement for a variety of reasons. But I would love to get back to that closer to 110 mark. Would be a really good place to be as an agency. So hope that these bonuses for laterals and things continue to pan out and we get some good candidates in that. Those are quick, easy, on the street people that already know how to do the job. And, we just had a comparative compliance candidate come in today, got interviewed, just going into the background process. So we're seeing some movement, but the entry level side, I'm really excited about. We're seeing some really, really strong candidates come through, which is great. And like I said, we're at 7 hired right now. We're probably going to be 10 by the end of next week. We'll have 10. The 3 that just went through the processes today, and the 3 that just came in. That's for the conditional with a regular polygraph. So it's I don't think 15 is unheard of for the academy this in February. Even all those other ones we have, I think 15's unheard of.
This is great. This is great news. And the thing you said that stood out to me was lose 25%. My line of work too, my business, if I lost 25%, it would take me forever to fill those positions. And, you know, I have to do the same thing, offer incentives because they're going to leave and go somewhere else. So I completely understand. And you guys have done a great job.
We've had to just rethink how we handle the job. I mean, that's where the technology came in, the drones and, you know, this body that's been at this table for the last, 10, 12 years has put the money into the street side camera system, which is the best in the state. We solve so many crimes from those cameras. Those cameras take the place of countless cops. In that sense, in that avenue of investigations, it takes the place of that. But we just try to reinvent. We started the watch center, the civilians taking calls for service off the guys that are on the street so that they have less to do on those things that someone else can handle. So that's taken 30% of the calls that can be handled at that level. So we've just had to rethink what policing looks like. And instead of being stuck in the old ways of, we just have to have this to do this, to do this. We did that for a year or so and realized this isn't getting us anywhere. And so we just reimagined what that looked like. And we stopped looking for the 25-year employee. Started thinking, what are we going to do with a 7-year employee? Because that's what we were seeing at the time. So how do we plan to run a department with a 7-year employee? And that's where we are today. And a lot of what we've tried to implement and did implement is working really well, which is going to add to the extra people we put on the street. It's going to just enhance what we've already been doing, which is I'm excited about and really looking forward to. And the guys need that break too. The guys and gals need that break. They're very taxed every day. I came in Thanksgiving Day and worked all day with the guys, and even on Thanksgiving Day they were running and we were all handling calls, and it just, they're used to it. It's what they're used to, but the reality is that we should be able to go out on the street as cops, handle calls, and have some time to, if nothing else, meet up with each other and commiserate as compadres, talk about some calls we've been on, have that little downtime, debrief, kind of let go of some of those things. But the reality is that the guys on the street are running from this call to this call to this call to this call until their shift ends. And there's no time to really sit and have that communication with each other during the shift. And we're only talking, in my day, you could do it for half an hour, or 10 minutes in between a call here or there. Those days don't happen anymore. and that's almost 24/7. Daylights today are as busy as evening shifts were back when I was on the street. Midnights are busy. Back when I was on the street, you could go January and February and literally be on the street and in a week handle 3 calls as an officer because it was just that slow. Those days are long gone. So we just have to constantly reevaluate how to do policing, and can't do without people though. So being able to do this is going to make a big difference, and I think it's going to really boost morale in the department as well. They're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and they're going to see some relief, and they're going to see some opportunity, because with these numbers, people can move from that patrol response to a specialized unit that they've always wanted to do. And right now, that's been kind of stifled because we don't have the people to do that.
Yeah.
So,
I think that it's important, your comment that, you know, the call volume that existed at one time a day previously does not exist any longer. I think that's important. And I think that that ties into Tiara's comment about the resource officers and the information that we heard from the state's attorney's office, because there's well, you probably don't want to, there's no other way to not link this, you know, and I know you guys have been working on it for, you know, a year now, on trying to figure out what tools you could put in the city's toolbox to reverse course on the decline in personnel that factors well outside of your control have compelled upon you over the recent years, right? And so, you know, the council gets this knee-jerk reaction letter from our state representative to address this issue. And I said at that time, you know, these are the right things we need to be addressing because they're community issues. I don't agree with the way they were presented, but they're the things we need to address. And so we did that. We went to work on communicating to all those parties on how do we address these things? Because we can't do it in silos. We can't do it independently. So how do we do these things? And your point about the state's attorney's office is well taken. And your point about, you know, the load of work. And here's the reality. And here's what I would say. And I think we tried to convey to the state delegation when we met with them a few weeks back. Most of those items rest outside of our control. But we're here to say to you, our county and our state counterparts, we're going to hire the necessary personnel. We're going to take that step because that's something we can control. That's something we can manage, and that's something we can improve upon. But if we hire 30 more people and they arrest individuals that break into our meters repeatedly on a daily basis and then get let out the same day to go do the same thing, it doesn't matter how many people we hire because we can't fix that issue because that's a court issue, right? We can't have officers repeatedly respond, with all due respect, to the very pop-up nonprofit entities that the gentleman from Frederick was referring to, and not have some mechanism in place to properly monitor and regulate those entities so that that doesn't occur. So, you know, out of the 8 items on that list, this to me was our sort of, we can do this one, right? We can put things in place to do this one. But the county and the state counterparts and those entities and agencies that exist with under that umbrella, the state needs to hear and understand that those other 7 pieces are well outside of the things that we have authorization, regulatory ability to control. And what we do here can't occur in a silo or a vacuum from those other things that have to happen from DSS and DJJ and the health department, all those other things we heard from those other partners that we invited into this room. You know, the state has to do some lifting with us so that we don't have, the issue of drug housing that we talked about, and the issue of rehab housing that we talked about, and the issue of, court decisions, because there isn't, enough evidence occurring that we talked about. Those other things have to happen as well. So, thank you.
Well, and just, there's a population of our society that are going to commit crimes, no matter how many cops you got. To go to your meter comment, Councilman, one of the last arrests we made, the gentleman was breaking into the meter across the parking lot from an officer who was sitting on his bike, on his bicycle, the downtown officer, in plain view. Did it anyway. A lot of those that people thought these people were arrested that day, we were able to identify them and get them charged in terms of applying for the charges, but they weren't actually arrested because we didn't have them in custody, didn't know where they were at the time. So they were still committing those crimes even after that. But to your point, even with that, they weren't going to jail. They were going to go to the commissioner and they were going to be right back out because commissioners don't put them in jail under the state mandates that's been put in place years ago. Commissioners don't put you, the only way you go to jail when you've been charged is if you're a threat to others. It has to be a threat to others.
Or the meetings that we
that's the biggest-
had,
one of
the
the biggest
meetings we
things, so.
attended, and HPD did well to explain to the shopping center owner, we met out there about a month ago, explain that, we have went in and we've addressed areas where individuals, are staying and then going into the shopping centers. And the answer can't be that the shopping center owner levels the entire forest around him. Like, that can't be the answer to those issues. And the city can't be the entity that has this, sole responsibility to address issues that are occurring in the multitude of entities out there, that effectuate these things.
By no means I'm saying we don't need more cops, because we do. But more cops doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have less crime. It just means that you're taking and you're not taxing your staff and you're able to do certain things and maybe prevent some things, but the crimes are still going to be committed to some level, no matter how many cops you've got. That anyone in the public that believes that that's going to solve that problem just isn't reality. I mean, within the last 6 years, we had a stabbing that happened right over here on the street, right around the corner. And I had a lieutenant and a sergeant just come out of the city hall and was on this side of the street. And the stabbing happened right there. I mean, they didn't see him, they couldn't see him, but they were literally around the corner.
Just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we were down
There was
on
officers
the
in
John
the
Street area,
community.
yeah. And then, shooting happens and we had 9 cops in that area, 9 cops. It's just, the cop can't be everywhere.
But
And
you
I-
caught
and
the
More
suspect
boots on the
though.
ground is always better for our city.
It's always better,
Yeah.
no doubt about it.
Exactly.
I'm not denying that.
Like Councilman Osher said, there's a lot of factors outside the city's control, but there's factors we can control too, so. having
And-
more police.
And even more police, we're gonna be putting those police into areas where the data says we need to be.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna be in neighborhoods that don't have a lot of crime going on because that doesn't make much sense. We're still gonna patrol those areas, to some extent, but you're not gonna see a cop in those areas the same you would be. We're not gonna be patrolling out, where the warehouses are that have been annexed. Why? There's no need to go patrol those areas, even though they're in the city. We're gonna be in areas that we need to be in, based on that. And that's what we do every 2 weeks. We look at CompStat and we base it where we're gonna be in the next 2 weeks, where we're gonna reposition some of our staff based on the data that we have coming in, where the crimes have been happening, where the indicators are, where the trends are, where our intelligence says we should be. And we make the best, most efficient use of that staff. Even if we got 20 more staff on the street, we're gonna purpose those staff where they need to be, in a way that makes us the most effective. I will say this again, our closure rate for solving crime is better than anybody else. In my 33 years here, we have 3 open homicide cases. 3. I challenge anyone sitting at this table or anywhere listening to this broadcast to find me an agency that can say that. And that's just looking at one set of crimes, a homicide. We have 3 open homicide cases in 33 years. We solve a multitude of low-level crimes that most agencies can't because of the technology, because of the camera system, because of that, what we do. Chief Tabaka, when he first came here, mentioned to me on a call that he was so impressed coming from Norfolk that he heard our guys on the radio during any call, someone's jumping on the camera system, someone's doing this, someone's doing that. Investigations are happening with officers not even showing up on that call because they can take a load of that. They can jump on the data, they can look things up for the guys that are showing up and do that on the way to their calls. And it's amazing the amount of crimes that we solve every day. And I don't know if that the citizens really are ever gonna really feel that, because unless you live it every day like the guys do and we do, it's kind of hard to imagine what that looks like when you know what it really looks like at other agencies. So something that this body and people in this city should be very proud of.
Will this be on the agenda for this month? Do we have to
With
approve
the
this in
approval?
regular session? So this month?
Yep.
Okay.
So you'll approve it what's today, 3rd, 10th, 17th?
Any other questions for Chief Kifer?
Keep up the great job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
All right. I want to apologize to the city administrator because during our first mayor and council meeting, during my nervous time, I missed you.
Don't do it again.
I know. I promise I won't.
I'm kidding you. No, I appreciated that, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Needless to say, the holiday season this weekend is an extremely busy one. Starts off Friday night, City Park tree lighting from 5 to 7. The lights will go on at 7, but there'll be all kinds of activities for the kids and adults alike. So get down there at 5 o'clock and have a good time. Also, it's Christmas with Santa on the 6th at 6 o'clock at HPD, hosted by HPD. So plenty of time to go to HPD headquarters on Burhands and then come on over to the tree lighting. German Christmas is Saturday at Hager House. It'll show how Christmas was celebrated in colonial times, $5 a person, 12 and under are free. Also on Saturday, even though it's already been sold out with over 70 participants this year, the Downtown Cookie Crawl. Area businesses will be providing cookies to folks as they come through the downtown. And again, over 70 folks, it's sold out. Should be a great time. Holiday pop-ups continue at 60 West Washington Street from 11 to 5 on Saturday. 14 vendors will be there. German Christmas will continue on Sunday at the Hager House, 2 to 5. Tours will go every 30 minutes. And lastly, on Saturday, this is for former Councilman Forrest Easton, SantaCon will be Saturday. Toys for Tots fundraiser, dress up as Santa or Mrs. Claus and visit participating downtown restaurants and bars. And Forrest Easton is my favorite Santa Claus when it comes to the SantaCons, and maybe he'll get Jill to dress up as Mrs. Santa this year. So thank you, Mayor. Again, thank Joey for bringing that forward. You know, it was one thing we have said for the last, well, I've been administrator 6 years, that when we went through that 25% reduction, that we were going to get it back and we would do whatever we had to do to present to this council an compelling reason to bring them back. And we're doing what we said. And I'm proud of that. So thank you, Mayor.
Councilperson Anderson. Any comments?
First. Have a great weekend, everyone.
I hope everybody enjoys the city's activities this weekend, and, you know, holidays are coming up. I hope everybody gets to, you know, enjoy time with their family and all that good stuff. So that's it.
Councilperson Burnett.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilperson Alshire.
Just hope everyone had a good holiday, Thanksgiving, and just enjoy all the activities that are going to take place.
I want to thank the fellows at the Masonic Temple for inviting me on Thanksgiving to do a Thanksgiving dinner for people in need. It was a really, really great eye-opening experience, and I had a great time. And I also want to thank HPD and the fire department and any other city staff that worked on Thanksgiving. It's very much appreciated by mayor and council and city staff. So with that, any, oh, wait a minute, there is one more thing. Okay. This is the request for letter of support from the city of Hagerstown from Sean Griffith. It's regarding the Housing Authority submitting an application to HUD for their RED conversion project based on voucher demo program for the rehabilitation of the properties at Nolan Village. HUD requires a letter of support from City of Hagerstown as part of the application process. The letter is attached for our review on the back, on the second page. And you want me to go ahead and read the letter? That's up to you. If everybody wants to read, I can read it. If not, everybody can read.
I think that for, maybe just for citizen awareness, you know, as we're sitting at the table with the letter, and it's not very detailed, but my understanding from attending the last meeting with the Housing Authority, that basically the original plan was for the removal of Nolan and then rebuild, and now what they're looking at is a conversion, or at least some part of it, where some of the courts will not be rebuilt, and a number of the courts will get basically the inside, you know, they'll get gutted, and then the existing shells will be converted into a number of units, and then they're going to try and do some of them up and down. So folks in that area may have had an expectation that, you know, it all gets taken down and then completely rebuilt, and it looks like they're heading in a different direction. And I think that has something to do with construction possibilities.
To that point, we haven't heard from Sean in a while about that project. Is that going to be on
The choice neighborhoods?
No, the
Or
Nolan,
The Nolan project.
Nolan,
we
yeah,
get
he
it
came
back
to
in.
us before and gave us a presentation about it, but,
yeah, I think it's
I'll-
changing.
I can give him, I can contact him, sure.
okay,
Bring him in January.
yeah.
Thought it was gonna be kind of like gateway project.
I think that was the initial,
The-
I think that was the initial plan, but I think that plan has changed where they're basically going to gut a number of the court structures that exist there now and then convert them into living spaces.
So some will still be like the courts and then it'll just be open.
Yeah, some of the area will be open.
Did they have to go through any kind of approval for those changes?
They have to go through the federal process.
Okay.
Yeah, which is part of what this is.
So yeah, let's definitely invite Sean back.
Okay.
Yeah, the
to
only
ask
thing,
those kind of questions.
the only thing I didn't like was part of the plan envisions removal of the basketball court behind court 8, or court 8 or 7, which is on what I call the Greenberry side. And my hope was that, you know, because I live, you know, generally in that neighborhood area, you know, that type of active recreation space, if we could, you know, work with them, because there is going to be more green space in the area now, to try and find a place, because that is something that you know, the youth in the area, that park in general, I think, one, like to use, and two, you know, the next closest park, I guess, would be to walk over the overpass and down into City Park. And even beyond that, for any type of like, you know, active recreation
And
space.
they're gonna have this
So-
open field, they can redo the whole park. Basketball court, park, just.
That was my 2 cents.
Yeah, all that.
So yeah.
Well, what we're looking, this is a letter of support, so what we're looking for is a head nod from you guys.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments we need to address? If not, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All right, we're adjourned.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then